Do yourself a favor. Do this experience some justice. Pay attention to the evaluator, the one who is seeking verification, the one who is seeking validation. The addiction to progress, the addiction to referencing memory to evaluate this here and now. Every single time we move into evaluation, we are foregoing this because we are attempting to compare something that is incomparable, something that is incompatible with something else, something that doesn't exist. It's just a memory. And for all intents and purposes, whatever is remembered is basically just made up on the spot. This is about honesty. This is about openness, and this is about full engagement. The comparison, the contrasting is the addiction. That is the thought. The thought is the reference. Without thought, where is reference? It's an addiction. And all addictive behaviors have the same type of components. They are all surrounding avoiding something else in comparison, avoiding this, avoiding sensation, avoiding presence, avoiding the unbinding. And then they send us into a sense of shame or self-doubt or lacking. And as soon as that particular part of the cycle is reached, it sends us right back to the beginning, right back to avoidance, shame, right back to the beginning, avoidance, shame, and so on. What is progress? There is no such thing. And yes, initially it seems as if progress may have a purpose, because we're kind of playing with using mechanisms of this relative reality, this identity, to help it reveal itself. Yet still, that's still an illusion. It's still not this. Please pay extra special attention to the reference machine, the one that says, yeah, but right now it's better than it used to be. Is that needed? Is that necessary? That's just reifying a belief that there must be comparison to a past event in order to evaluate and assess this. Maybe this cannot be assessed. Maybe it doesn't need to be assessed. That's the pointing there. Does it have to be? Is there a requirement? Does a thought need to be present? Does there need to be reference? Or can we just be in it without any reference, without any pattern seeking or pattern creation? Thought is just a series of constructs, comparing and contrasting something that cannot be compared and contrasted. It would be like taking a bucket of water, putting our hands in it, and attempting to move different portions of that water aside and saying, oh, this is the better type of water, this is the not as good type of water, and this is something completely different. It's still all just this. What won't you let go of? What can't be released? It's a little tricky with language here. Surrender, let go. Not quite the flavor. Because then it gives us the illusion, if we're in the midst of surrender, that there's something to surrender to. But there's nothing actually to surrender to. We're already here. It's a weird illusion, a hall of mirrors, if you will, to fight against that which is, because you can't fight against it anyway. It's just resistance for resistance sake. It's just struggle for struggle's sake. It is just pain for pain's sake. It is suffering for the sake of suffering. So strange, the experience. So seemingly human. There's really no reason why, it just is. So instead of asking, what won't you let go of? What won't you let be? What won't you let be the way it is? That's the illusion part. To have presence and to somehow be in a state of rejecting that presence, there's a seeming rupture that takes place in experience, in perception. It's a conceptual rupturing. It's not actually happening. But that conceptual rupturing is the pain. It's the reference point. It's the saying, this is separate than this. Maybe this reality cannot be divided into portions. Maybe this experience of here and now, this awareness, this unbound consciousness doesn't need to be partitioned into pieces. That's the letting be. Let it be what it is. And if it seems to be a certain way, key word here, seems, look again. Keep looking. Does it keep a state of permanence? Does it have a state of consistency? Or is it just what it seems moment to moment? And maybe as we get a little bit closer to what seems to be a center of this temporal experience of here now, as we get closer, we see that it's form, emptiness, blinking in and out of existence, billions of trillions of times a second. Here and gone, here and gone, here and gone. Kind of like that, form and emptiness. This relative reality of form, it's like a game. You can buy into it, you can examine it, and you can play with it. But ultimately, it's still just as if the mind is creating a series of constructs, just kind of building this from past experience, or even in the moment, building it. Building something out of nothing. Hall of mirrors. And maybe there is something here. Maybe there's not. This particular pointing is to say, maybe. That's a lot softer. That's a lot more honest and open and vulnerable to be with maybe. Maybe. Life is tough. Maybe. Maybe life is suffering. Maybe. Stick with that maybe, because that maybe leads us into I don't know. And I don't know is an invitation for curiosity. Curiosity being such a powerful driver, a force of nature, an aspect of authenticity, something that has just perpetual inertia anyway. Maybe this potential universe, maybe this all is curiosity. Maybe the whole creation of life was just the inertia of curiosity. And I don't mean one who is curious, just the dynamic flow of a force that is curiosity. One that is dynamic, changing, and discovering something, but not as a permanent place or a fixture or a solid, consistent object, but just discovering discovery itself. Maybe. All things to play with. What collections do you have? This is a useful inquiry. Do you collect experiences? Do you collect objects? Are there fixations with these things? Even in the realm of spirituality and this path, so to speak, this path, which is, there's no official stance here. even in the midst of this, are you collecting experience? Are you collecting these memories to construct a comparison to what's occurring here and now? And the ironic thing about the present moment is that we just don't know it in the way that the mind is used to it, yet there's some sort of intelligence that is just that, here now. Like a frame rate. Watching a video at 30 frames a second, in between each frame is a moment of nothing. Or maybe blackness, or whatever you want to call it, a sliver. That seems to be what this present moment is. Are you collecting these experiences to validate and verify some progress, to validate and verify a narrative, to share with others, to create some sort of social currency? And if so, it's actually okay. But just being aware of that is all that matters. How much can you notice? How much can you be aware of? Is there a limitation to awareness? Is there a limitation to the sense of attention? Attention's a tricky one. Because when it comes to attention, it is often pointing to there's one who must give attention or have attention, but that's not quite the case. This all seems to be attention. Everything seems to be attention. It's a matter of having that unbound, untethered attention. Attention not just to thought, attention not just to sensation. And yeah, that's definitely pointed to here quite frequently, but it's beyond that. That's just a gateway, as mentioned many times before. What is it to rest with infinite, unbound, untethered attention? And yeah, an aspect of this perception of a past, an aspect of a perception of pain and suffering is part of a universal attention, yet it is just the tip of a pin. It's smaller than that. It's the electron on an atom of the vastness of this attention. Is that minute quality so important that we just rest in that, or is there something more vast here? That's all. So to continue to experiment and play with attention, to notice thought, have that move into sensation, so on and so forth, it gives us a little bit of a taste, a glimpse, if you will, of something that is vast, a consciousness that rests with an infinite everythingness. And that doesn't mean that there's a plateau there either. Yet there is certainly a point where there seems to be an end to something. And to touch that point, to be willing to cross that threshold of feeling this terminal uniqueness, this personalization, this sense of self, to be able to step into something more vast, to play with it, to experiment with it, there is a point where the minutia of a self seems to end. And even all of the aspects of this relative reality, this reality that seems to be composed of partitioned form, bits and pieces, objects, subjects, so on and so forth, seems to be associated directly with a center of attention, a very minute piece of that. This doesn't have to be hard. This doesn't have to hurt, yet that's part of it too. And the most direct pointing that will always seem to be clear when it comes to identity, just because the identity seems to have a pattern and it's not unique to any of us individuals, any body, any human being. The identity itself seems to be a shared collective experience. And it follows a pattern of centering attention and having a self as a reference point for everything. If a self is a reference point for everything, then it is always going to be obscured. Curiosity is really powerful here. And to step into that space, to allow inertia of curiosity to take the experience, we definitely step into something that is vast, unbound, and untethered. Look at some of those things. What is being collected? These memories, these thoughts, these experiences, are those being collected? Because as soon as they're being referred to, it's pure obscuration at that point. They don't exist. The glimpses that you may have had don't exist. This is what exists right here, right now. That's it. It's all we ever have. It's the only thing that can be semi-verifiable. And I'm pointing to semi-verifiable because the further we explore, even sensations, we find nothing there. The further we explore whatever this tangible aspect of reality seems to be, we begin to find nothing there. Keep going. But start with that which is palpable. Maybe you don't need to collect anything. Maybe you don't need to collect these experiences. You don't need to collect the narrative. You don't need to collect the story. Maybe you can just let that be. Let it be. Just kind of like some background music. Every thought is like a sound of the wind whistling through the trees. And you can hear it in the background. And then step into sensation if that's really powerful and palpable and visceral. Be in the midst of that. And maybe that even becomes like the sound of a babbling brook in the background. Now what is there? Be immersed as much as possible right here, right now. And along the journey, if some sort of awakening hasn't been a clarifying realization for you, turn toward those sensations. No stone, no leaf left unturned, even if it's been turned over before. Constantly in the inertia of curiosity itself, which will naturally engage courage as well. To sit in the unknown until we don't care. There's a considerable amount of liberation there. And who knows? Maybe something will be discovered firsthand, because that's all that really matters. These are just words. These have no substance. They're pointing to something, but even that thing has no substance. Keep going. Maybe you might begin to see that this is a game. It's a game that doesn't make it trivial per se, but it also doesn't make it serious. Then we start getting to the crux of that paradox. It's real and unreal. There's form and emptiness. Everything that has form returns to emptiness. This is the seeming way it is. But it doesn't mean that there's one or the other. It doesn't mean that there's neither. It doesn't mean that there's both. Somehow it's a combination of all that. Seemingly so, anyway. And who knows, maybe even all of this is being made up somehow. Even these experiences that feel so palpable and deep. That's the rub, but also the fun. There's no end to this. And if there is, no one has been able to speak of it, of course, because it just can't be spoke of. It cannot be communicated or transmitted in any way. So we just drop clues, we point to some breadcrumbs, and we just keep swimming. Please be willing to play with it and experiment with every aspect of what seems to be a pattern. If there is anything that seems consistent, explore that. Those are the things that are primarily the bars on the prison cell. That comfort and that familiarity, that is not the unknown, that is the known. And the known is finite. That is not a step into the infinite. If we know it, we don't explore it. So now that you can see that there are patterns that continue to seemingly arise on a consistent basis, go there, explore there. And in that exploration, is there a sense of feeling uncomfortable, uncomfortability? I don't even know if that's a word. Is there a sense of feeling ecstatic? Does that get you closer to a sense of no? Get there. The no is where it's hiding. And what's strange is we are protecting it with our pain. We are protecting it with the suffering. We're protecting the obscuration itself. Such a strange, funny, odd human journey this is. When it comes to pointers, when it comes to those who are in a place of some sort of guidance, however you want to look at it, we just point. Don't mistake the tip of the finger for the moon. That's all. Don't get too caught up in the terminology, the methodology, the practice. Get to a place where intuition shows you, because it's always there. It's always arising, so to speak. And even then, we are mostly careful about taking a stance here, about taking a position. Because it changes and it moves. It cannot be predicted. Some aspects seem to be consistent, but even still, that's part of the illusion. Sometimes we have to play in the illusion to see that which is absolute, to see that which is unkept, unboxed. This is Pandora's box. And upon opening the box, if you know the story, it let out a significant amount of chaos. Yet, in the bottom of that box was something that the Greeks referred to, at least the translation is hope. It was hope. I'm not saying that we need to apply any kind of faith or belief in a sense of hope, because that's still kind of like an object of the future. Yet it is giving a little bit of insight here. That which we open up, even if it initially seems untenable, painful, chaotic, confusing, and dangerous, isn't alone. It contains something that reveals a sense of completeness here, wholeness in all of this perfection, a sense of full connection. Play with that a little bit.